This Other London, Adventures in the Overlooked City, written and read by John Rogers.
Foreword by Russell Brand. John Rogers is an important person in my life. As well as being one of my best friends, he serves as a navigational point in musings and conversations. Often when discussing the non-negotiable nature of sin, my mates and I will say, well, what would John Rogers do? As you will learn in these pages, John lives in Leytonstone with his two sons and his wife Haidee, and in spite of the inferred domesticity of that setup, he is a man who lives on society's margins, not through occultism or deviance, but through his astonishing ability to accumulate and, more importantly, relay extraordinary information. He is like Prospero crossed with Mr. Chips. I met John in London whilst participating in one of the many half-arsed sub-fringe sketch shows that go on in the capital. We were performing at Riverside Studios in Hammersmith, where they used to make TFI Friday. It quickly became clear that the show we were involved in would yield very little, and equally clear that John would become a friend for life. John is endowed with a gentle, humble, humorous wisdom which is evident throughout these pages. You can learn from John on topics as diverse as Marxism, botany, football, punk, astronomy, gastronomy and love. However, where John really comes to life is when perpendicular with his boots on. I mean when he's walking. We don't have a physical relationship. Someone once described being in love as like finding a secluded ballroom in the house in which you'd always lived. To walk through London with John is like that. The city is suddenly alive with concealed plaques, submerged rivers and unnoticed gargoyles. John is like an alchemist, not only in that he is unkempt and dresses like a person who has fallen through the cracks, he also makes the mundane and unremarkable glow with newly imbued magic. We once walked through my hometown of Grays in Essex, past the ambulance station at the top of our street, and I instinctively jumped on the knee-high wall to stroll along it as I'd always done as a child. When I told John, who was beside me, he said that we could consider memories of a place as objects left strewn about until we returned to collect them. Once, when I was staying on the Strand, John, like the tangle-haired shrub shaman that he is, knew all manner of secret doors and passageways that lay unchecked on Fleet Street. We walked through an old, creaking oak door and were suddenly in the quads of Temple. John knew it was there and didn't care if we were allowed in. This is in fact where we saw Margaret Thatcher watering roses just months before her death. We went into Lincoln's Inn, which I never knew existed, and it was like falling down a time tunnel, not least because a costume drama was being made. Past Woolwich, John described two stone giants that adorned a church now used primarily for Romanian Christians, telling me how Gog and Magog were Britain's Romulus and Remus. Sometimes I think he knows everything. Like most people who are truly wise, he never makes other people feel small for not knowing something. John patiently smiles as I tell him all about stuff he knows much more about than me, then nods and gently puts me straight. This charming and engaging didacticism is abundantly present in his first book. I'm excited that through his writing, a wider audience can now share in the joy of John Rogers, that now thousands will, as I have done, begin to understand the character of place, the relevance of history, and most importantly, that adventure is right outside your front door if you're prepared to take the first step. You, like me, could have no better guide than the man who has written this book.
Introduction. Exploration begins at home. Pathfinder, A Foot Round London, 1911. Backpacking in Thailand in my early 20s, I climbed down off an elephant in a small village in the mountains of the Golden Triangle. The streets of 1994 East London felt far away. I had broken free for new horizons. I entered a small wooden hut where a villager prepared freshly mashed opium poppy seeds in a long pipe. In Hackney, such men were called drug dealers. Here they were known as shamans. Across the rooftop of the world on an elephant, I wrote in my travel journal. The flight to Bangkok had been the first time I'd been on a plane. My previous travels hadn't extended beyond a coach trip to Barcelona. The top of this mountain was the edge of my known world, the real beginning of an adventure. In the gloom of the hut was another group of travellers, fellow explorers and adventurers. I spoke to the pale, willowy girl sitting next to me, dressed in baggy tie-dye trousers, a large knot of holy string on her wrist from a long pilgrimage.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?